Let me ask you something. When did privacy become suspicious? Silence is not secrecy. It's misunderstood, often misjudged, and rarely appreciated in a world that glorifies noise. But silence isn't a void, it's a force. It doesn't mean you're hiding something. It means you're protecting something. Silence is a boundary, a filter, a sanctuary for your thoughts, your healing, your growth. It's a choice to be present without needing to perform. It's choosing to observe rather than react, to understand before responding, and to honor your peace over proving a point. When you choose silence, you're not being secretive, you're being selective. Not everything deserves a reaction, and not everyone deserves an explanation. In fact, the more you explain, the more you hand out pieces of yourself to people who haven't earned the right to know you. Silence is where you reclaim your power. It's the difference between reacting out of insecurity and responding with intention. It's the difference between needing to be understood and being confident in your own understanding. Silence gives you space to think. In the pause, you process, you assess what truly matters and what simply triggered you in the moment. When you're silent, you're not pretending to be fine. You're figuring out what you need to be. You're not bottling things up. You're letting them settle, allowing clarity to rise without the noise of impulsive reaction. It's easy to believe that silence is weakness, but it takes far more strength to stay silent when every emotion in your body wants to erupt. Silence is self-mastery. It's the refusal to hand over your peace to temporary chaos. It's choosing to control what you can yourself. When everything else feels like it's spinning, anyone can yell, anyone can post, anyone can speak just to be heard. But not everyone has the discipline to sit with discomfort and wait for the right time to speak from a place of truth rather than pain. Silence protects relationships. It stops you from saying words you can't take back. It holds space for listening, even when you're aching to defend yourself. When used with wisdom, silence allows truth to surface. Your truth, the other person's truth, and the shared truth in between. It slows the moment down long enough to understand what's really being said beyond the words. And sometimes that silence is louder than anything you could ever say. Silence invites observation. It allows you to see more, hear more, feel more. You start to notice who interrupts it, who respects it, and who fears it. You begin to realize that people will fill the silence with their assumptions, their projections, their insecurities, and that's fine. You don't have to correct them. Let people misunderstand you if they need to. Your peace is not up for debate. Let them talk. You'll stay quiet and keep building. Sometimes silence is strategy. You're not lost. You're not passive. You're preparing. Not every chapter of your journey needs to be announced in real time. Some things grow best in the dark. Roots don't scream while they stretch deep into the soil. They do the unseen work so the tree can eventually stand tall. That's what you're doing in your silence. You're laying foundations. You're anchoring yourself before you rise. Silence doesn't mean you're disconnected. It means you're deeply connected to something that doesn't require an audience. You're rooted in your purpose. You're aligned with your direction. You're not wasting energy convincing others of your worth because you know it. You walk in a room and don't need to announce your presence. It's felt. Your silence becomes your signature. It becomes the room you walk into when the world gets too loud and the expectations get too heavy. The world will tempt you to speak, to react, to prove, but silence is where your truest power lives. It's not a cover-up. It's a conscious refusal to overexpose. It's a discipline, a sacred pause, and sometimes a form of healing. Silence is not secrecy. It's sovereignty. You're not hiding. You're choosing yourself. Quietly, intentionally, powerfully. Your power grows when you protect your privacy. In a time where everything is broadcasted, where personal lives become public entertainment, and where validation often comes from digital applause, the decision to hold something back is revolutionary. Privacy isn't about being secretive, it's about being selective. It's about knowing that not everything about you needs to be shared, and that some things, when kept sacred, retain their strength. Privacy is your inner fortress. It's where your intentions live before they're tested by the world. It's where your ideas develop, where your dreams take shape without the burden of opinions, expectations, or criticism. When you keep things private, you give them a chance to grow in peace. You allow yourself to stumble without an audience, to pivot without judgment, to change your mind without having to explain yourself to people who don't live your life. That's not avoidance, it's wisdom. When you protect your privacy, you protect your energy. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't deserve access, you chip away at your focus. Every time you overshare with people who only want gossip, not growth, you scatter your potential. Not everyone who listens cares. Not everyone who smiles supports you. When your life becomes open terrain, you lose control over the narrative. And once people feel entitled to your story, they start editing it for you. Power thrives in stillness. Power matures in silence. The moment you start preserving what matters, you become more intentional about where your energy goes. You stop performing and start building. You stop asking for permission and start walking in purpose. Privacy isn't just a boundary, it's a weapon. It confuses the people who try to calculate your next move, who feed off your vulnerability, who depend on your predictability. Protecting your privacy doesn't mean you're isolating yourself. It means you're choosing discernment. You start asking yourself who has earned the right to know your plans, your fears, your dreams. You begin to see that some people want information not to support you, but to study you, to compete with you, or even to sabotage you. There's wisdom in understanding that not everyone needs a front row seat in your life. Some only deserve the summary, some not even that. When your life is private, it's also peaceful. You free yourself from the burden of expectation. You're not rushed by timelines you shared with others. You're not haunted by the fear of failure because nobody's watching your every move. You can fall, rise, change direction, or walk away entirely without needing to explain. That kind of freedom breeds creativity. It makes you brave, it makes you powerful. Privacy isn't the absence of connection. It's the presence of control. You're not denying anyone access to your life. You're deciding who gets in, how far, and for how long. You don't owe transparency to people who haven't earned your trust. Your experiences are not public property. Your struggles are not entertainment. Your healing doesn't need spectators. In protecting your privacy, you reclaim your narrative. You stop letting people define you based on fragments they've seen or heard. You stop defending yourself against misinterpretations. You stop shrinking yourself to avoid judgment. The less they know, the less they can control, and the less you care about their curiosity, the more focused you become. The world often confuses openness with authenticity. But authenticity isn't about exposure, it's about alignment. You can be real without revealing everything. You can be sincere without being fully seen. Some parts of you are meant to be preserved, not displayed. Some chapters of your life are meant to be lived, not posted. When you hold something close, you nurture it. You give it time to breathe. You give yourself permission to be unfinished, unpolished, and unknown until it's time to reveal the version that's ready. That's where power is born in, the quiet behind the curtain, in the spaces where only you exist and only you decide what happens next. Privacy is a declaration. It says, I am not here to be consumed. I am not here to be figured out. It says, I am building something worth protecting, something that doesn't need to be validated to be valuable. The more you guard your life, the more your life starts working for you. Your power grows when you protect your privacy, because in that protection, you find clarity, confidence, and the courage to lead your life without needing to explain it. Not everything about you needs to be on display. In a world obsessed with visibility, where people measure their worth by how much attention they receive, the quiet decision to keep parts of yourself hidden can feel radical, but it's not hiding, it's honoring. It's understanding that your life, your emotions, your growth, and your setbacks don't have to be shared in order to be real. You are allowed to be a private person in a public world. You are allowed to keep moments sacred and not turn every experience into content for others to consume. There is a difference between being open and being exposed. Openness is a choice. Exposure is vulnerability without boundaries. You do not owe the world constant updates about your pain, your healing, your decisions, or your joy. Some things gain power in silence. Some things lose meaning when they're shared too soon, too often, or with the wrong people. There is wisdom in keeping parts of your journey to yourself, especially when those parts are still unfolding, still fragile, still raw. When you live your life for display, you start shaping yourself for the audience rather than your own evolution. You become so focused on how things look that you lose touch with how they feel. You begin to perform rather than live. And soon, your life becomes a mirror of others' expectations instead of an honest reflection of who you are. But when you choose privacy, you reclaim authenticity. You get to evolve without commentary. You get to make mistakes without turning them into lessons for the world. You get to heal without having to prove how far you've come. Not everything is meant to be witnessed. Some relationships are stronger when they aren't posted. Some dreams are safer when they're nurtured in silence. Some emotions are healthier when they're processed in private. Just because something is true doesn't mean it needs to be shared. Just because you feel something deeply doesn't mean the world needs to know. You're allowed to have inner worlds that are not up for public debate. You're allowed to keep sacred what matters to you most. There is freedom in not explaining yourself. There is peace in not needing validation. The less you expose, the more control you have. When people know less about your struggles, they can't weaponize them. When they don't know your plans, they can't interfere. And when they aren't constantly invited into your process, they can't influence it. You owe it to yourself to protect your space, your mind, your goals from the noise of opinions that were never meant to matter. Not everything about you is meant to be consumed. You are not a brand. You are not a spectacle. You are a human being with layers, history, pain, joy, and growth that don't need to be constantly explained. You have the right to be seen only as much as you want to be. You have the right to say, "This is mine and I'm not sharing it." There is nothing wrong with being misunderstood by people who don't know you well. It's not your job to clarify. It's not your job to over-explain your boundaries, your silence, your distance. The right people will understand without having to be told everything. The wrong people will never get it, no matter how much you share. So protect your peace, not your image. You are not less real because you're quiet. You are not less brave because you choose discretion. You are not less authentic because you believe some parts of your life are nobody's business. Your worth does not rise with your visibility. Your truth does not grow with applause. It stands on its own, solid, unshaken, and deeply yours. We live in a time where people wear their trauma like a badge, where oversharing is often mistaken for connection. But true connection doesn't need a spotlight. It needs sincerity. It doesn't require broadcasting. It requires depth. And sometimes the most authentic, powerful, and liberating thing you can do is to live quietly, love deeply, and grow silently. You don't need to prove your journey to anyone. The realest parts of you might never be posted, never be told, never be seen by the masses. And that doesn't make them any less valuable. In fact, it often makes them more. Discretion is the gatekeeper of influence. In a culture that celebrates loudness, constant visibility, and impulsive expression, the art of restraint has become underrated. Yet those who hold true power know the value of saying less. They understand that influence isn't built through overexposure, it's built through intention. When you're discreet, you guard not only your privacy but your positioning. You create space between what others think they know and what you truly hold. That space becomes your leverage. It becomes the quiet strength that sets you apart in a world that's always shouting. Discretion is not about being mysterious for the sake of it. It's about understanding that everything you share becomes part of your narrative, your reputation, and your strategy. Not every thought needs to be voiced, not every move needs to be announced, and not every relationship needs to be showcased. Discretion allows you to navigate the world with control. It gives you the freedom to move without being watched, judged, or dissected. It is protection, not just of your plans, but of your peace. Influence is not just about being seen, it's about being respected. And respect grows when people realize you are not easily figured out, when they don't know what you'll say next. When they can't predict your next step. There's power in being untraceable, in being intentional with your words, your presence, your choices. The more people know about you, the more they feel entitled to your life. Discretion reminds them that access is earned, not given freely. True leaders, those who inspire without even speaking, often carry a quiet strength rooted in discretion. They listen more than they talk. They observe more than they react. They choose when to speak and when to remain silent. That silence is not passive, it's deliberate, because in silence they gather information. In silence they assess character. In silence they plan the kind of moves that shake rooms without warning. Influence that is loud may gain attention, but influence that is strategic earns trust. Discretion keeps you from being distracted. The moment you start broadcasting every step, you invite noise, opinions, criticism, expectations, and soon your path is no longer yours. You're moving to please the crowd, not to fulfill your purpose. Discretion keeps the distractions out. It clears the path so your focus stays sharp and your priorities remain intact. It allows you to execute your vision without interference from people who do not understand it. You don't owe explanations to people who are not invested in your growth. You don't need to justify your boundaries, your silence, or your decisions. The need to constantly explain comes from insecurity. But when you operate with discretion, you no longer perform for approval. You move from a place of self-assurance. That confidence is magnetic. It draws others in, not because you're trying to impress, but because your restraint commands attention. There's something powerful about a person who doesn't reveal everything. The one who walks into a room with presence, not because they talk the most, but because they know exactly when not to talk. Discretion sharpens your influence by creating curiosity. It makes people lean in. It makes them wonder what you know, what you're planning, what you're capable of, and that curiosity keeps your value high. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every moment is meant to be shared. When you learn to keep certain things to yourself, your goals, your process, your emotional triggers, you become unshakable. You can't be manipulated when people don't know what moves you. You can't be targeted when your vulnerabilities aren't on display. You can't be undermined when your steps are concealed until they're complete. Discretion is maturity, it's self-respect, it's the ability to hold power without flaunting it, to build without broadcasting, to influence without forcing. In a world where people constantly overshare to feel significant, discretion becomes a quiet rebellion. It's the decision to protect what matters most, because the more sacred your energy, your ideas, and your space become, the more potent your influence grows, not by shouting, but by simply knowing when to speak and, more importantly, when not to. The less they know, the more they wonder. In a world addicted to constant updates, quick answers, and full disclosure, mystery has become rare, and that rarity makes it powerful. When people can't figure you out completely, they fill in the gaps with curiosity. They lean in, they ask questions, they speculate, and that speculation gives you control. It gives you presence without performance. It gives you influence without explanation. When you choose to hold back, you don't lose power, you gain it. Because mystery demands attention, and curiosity is far more compelling than certainty, we are surrounded by oversharing. People post their thoughts the moment they have them, reveal their plans before they're even in motion, and explain themselves to anyone who questions them. But there is a quiet strength in not revealing everything. It means you understand the value of keeping parts of yourself sacred. It means you recognize that not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your process, your truth. And more than that, it means you are no longer trying to be understood by those who were never meant to understand you in the first place. When people know everything, they stop wondering, and when they stop wondering, they stop watching. But when you speak selectively, when you choose privacy over performance, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. You don't owe the world a play of your life. You are not here to satisfy their curiosity or feed their assumptions. You are here to evolve, to rise, to grow, and some of that must happen behind closed doors. The less they know, the more intentional your relationships become. People who truly care will respect your silence. They will value what you choose to share, and they won't demand more than you're willing to give. Those who are only interested in gossip or control will be frustrated by your boundaries, and that's how you know who to keep close. When you stop offering explanations for every move you make, you filter your circle. You begin to see who values your energy, not just your access. There is beauty in being unreadable. It forces people to deal with your presence instead of relying on a profile, a post, or a rumor. It makes them engage with you in real time. It makes them slow down and actually observe instead of assuming they already know you. In a world of transparency, discretion becomes captivating. You become the person who leaves a room but remains in their minds. Not because you said the most, but because you revealed the least. Let them wonder. Let them sit in their assumptions. You do not have to rush to correct every misunderstanding. Let your actions speak over time. Let your life reveal what words never could. You are not hiding. You are preserving. You are not avoiding. You are prioritizing. You are not distant. You are discerning. And that discernment is how you protect your peace, your purpose, and your power. People often seek to define what they can't understand. They want to label, categorize, and contain. But when you remain undefined, you remain free, free to change, free to grow, free to break your own patterns without needing permission. When they don't know what to expect, you have the advantage. They can't anticipate your next move, so they must watch, and that watchfulness keeps your influence alive. You are not meant to be figured out by everyone. You are not here to make sense to every person you meet. Some people will only understand the version of you they have access to, and that version is not obligated to tell the whole story. Give them fragments, not the full picture. Give them the surface, not the depth. The ones meant to go deeper will earn it. The rest can wonder. When you choose to remain private, it isn't a weakness. It's a strategy. It's the quiet confidence that says, I know who I am, and I don't need your understanding to validate it. It's the wisdom that understands that mystery keeps your energy intact. It's the strength to allow silence to speak where words are no longer necessary. So protect your story. Don't rush to share every chapter. The most powerful people often say the least, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand the impact of not saying everything. The less they know, the more they wonder, and sometimes that wonder is where your true influence begins. Mystery is a magnet. It pulls people in without asking, captures attention without demanding, and holds space in a world overflowing with noise. There is something undeniably powerful about not being fully understood. When people can't quite figure you out, when they can't define your next move or explain your silence, they become curious. That curiosity draws them closer. They want to know more, to uncover what's hidden beneath the surface, to make sense of what feels just out of reach. Mystery doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard. It simply exists, and that existence is felt. In a time where oversharing has become normal, where vulnerability is marketed and every emotion is turned into content, mystery becomes rare. And anything rare becomes valuable. People are no longer surprised by what's shared. They expect it. So when someone withholds, when someone chooses silence over spectacle, it disrupts the pattern. It makes others stop and wonder. It shifts energy, and that shift commands presence. You don't have to say a word. Your lack of exposure says it all. Mystery isn't about being evasive. It's about being intentional. It's about choosing what to reveal and when. It's not withholding out of fear, but guarding out of wisdom. You don't owe your story to everyone. You don't need to give your whole self to be accepted. In fact, the more you give away freely, the less value it holds. But when you offer glimpses, when you let people feel your presence without handing them your entire narrative, you leave a lasting impression. People remember mystery. It lingers in their thoughts and makes them curious long after the conversation ends. You become unforgettable not because of what you expose, but because of what you don't. You are not supposed to be an open book to every reader. Some people only get the cover. Others may earn a few chapters. But the entire story, that belongs to you and it's yours to protect. What you keep private becomes sacred. It becomes a source of inner power, something no one can take, twist, or tarnish. Mystery also gives you space. When people don't know everything about you, they can't limit you to one version of yourself. You are free to evolve without the pressure of others' expectations. You're allowed to pivot, to grow in silence, to redefine your identity without having to justify it. When you're mysterious, you're not boxed in by what people think they know. You get to surprise them, not for the sake of being unpredictable, but because you refuse to be confined. Mystery is magnetic because it speaks to the human desire to discover. It creates a sense of wonder, a sense of possibility. It draws people closer, not because you're being fake, but because you're being whole. Not everything needs to be explained. Not every emotion needs to be shared. Not every achievement needs to be posted. The most powerful energy is the one that is felt but not always seen. It's in the subtle looks, the intentional pauses, the quiet confidence. It's in knowing who you are and not needing anyone else to fully grasp it. Being mysterious doesn't make you less honest. It makes you more selective. You can be real and still private. You can be authentic without being accessible. In fact, that kind of mystery often makes your presence even more impactful. When you finally choose to speak, people listen. When you share, they value it, because it doesn't come often. It comes with weight, and in a world full of empty noise, your silence becomes meaningful. People are drawn to what they can't fully explain. They chase the unfamiliar, the intriguing, the ones who don't fit into predictable molds. That's the beauty of mystery. It doesn't beg for attention. It attracts it, not through performance, but through presence, not through constant explanation, but through a quiet self-assurance that speaks louder than words ever could. You don't have to be the loudest to be noticed. You don't have to be the most open to be impactful. Mystery has a gravity of its own. It draws without force, influences without effort, and leaves a mark without trying. That's what makes it a magnet. In a world where everything is exposed, mystery becomes the most irresistible force of all.